Good morning and happy Saturday. So I'm actually getting ready for the Tate McRae concert tonight, but I figured I can crank these out now pretty quick, but this one took some time because I wanted to see what they did. So I figured I'd do a video, especially just for the rookie teams, just because they're kind of floundering. So we kind of threw one together, took some notes. I have like quite a few tabs open, so kind of bear with me, but I did one for Jerome, and his team is Ruthless Aggression. Though, to be honest, after the draft, I've told multiple people this, I just see the team as Reckless Abandon. So that's kind of how I see it. So we'll start things off. Number 2 nomination, CeeDee Lamb, $60. So Lamb's going into year 6 in the NFL. He missed a couple games last year, and he only scored 6 touchdowns. He ended up finishing, I want to say, like, he had 101 receptions, and he was actually he was the 8th best receiver in fantasy. And it would be, like, you would consider that to be a career year, except the year before he led receivers in yards, touchdowns, and fantasy points. So he was that number 1 receiver in 2023. Basically, I want to say, once the Dak Prescott injury happened, he was the number 6 receiver, and then the injury happened, and he became the number 36 fantasy receiver. So, yeah, he still finished top 8, despite how bad the ending was without Prescott, and he's in the middle of his prime. He's only 26, so he came into the league pretty young at 20. I would say he's probably like around the 4th best fantasy receiver. No, he would probably be number 5. So I would probably take Amon-Ra St. Brown, probably Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and then it'd be like a toss-up, but I'd probably take maybe Puka or maybe Nico. He's around there. He's around top 5, but the back end of the top 5. But you spent $60 on him. I mean, he's a solid number 1 receiver. You paid the 3rd most for a receiver. So Puka went for 68. Jamar Chase went for 71, and you paid 60. It's actually not that bad. You actually basically paid for him at cost. And as long as Dak is healthy the whole season, he ought to be among the league's best. So I would say like 1,400 yards, probably like 8 touchdowns, close to like basically a top 5 fantasy wide receiver, maybe even top 3. So, very good player. You paid a lot for him, but I actually don't mind that. It's kind of the next thing where we just immediately kind of just go off the rails. So, the very next nomination was Bijan Robinson, the number 3 nomination for $90. And, yeah, you spent $90 on him. So, Bijan helped Patrick win a fantasy title last year in our league. He averaged 23.3 fantasy points from week 6 thereafter. He scored 14 touchdowns on the season, so not as many as Cook. Not as many as James Cook, obviously, but he's still in that realm. And he averaged at least 18 touches a game in every game but one, where they pulled him because it was a blowout. It was I want to say the 3rd to last game. So he was top 5 in snaps, carries, routes, targets, touches, yards, and fantasy points. He was the number 3 fantasy running back last year. He's only 23, which is scary. We're going into year 3, only 23. And Atlanta is the 3rd heaviest run team after the Eagles and Ravens, I want to say. So I think he'll be elite. I think he'll also get his 1,400 yards rushing. I think he'll get like maybe 14 rushing touchdowns, and then he'll get another 60 receptions, and then another like 400 yards receiving. He'll be a top 3 fantasy running back. If not, he could be the number 1 fantasy running back this year, because I think Barkley will get he'll get a little lighter, and I think Gibbs is going to take a step back. But he was excellent, genuinely excellent. So my issue is as you know later, you spent $90 on him. No one had spent more than 80. I want to say 81 last year. He went to Patrick, and Patrick did end up winning a title. But Patrick went very differently about building his team than you did, and you spending $90 on this means you didn't pay for him at cost. My cost for him was probably 80. You overspent on him, and that was after paying for CeeDee Lamb at cost. So by this point, if you can do math, $90 plus $60 equals $150. Your budget's $200, so you've spent 3/4 of your entire budget on 2 players. And that kind of where we're now off the rails, because the 13th nomination is Trey McBride, and we decided to spend $25 because we can. So I like McBride. He was good to me last year. He helped Mackenzie win a title, I want to say like 2 years ago. He's a solid player. He's in Arizona. I think he was one of the lowest like touchdown like receivers. Yeah, last year he only had for me like 3 touchdowns the whole season. So, but once he was but he's been like a huge like outlet for Kyler Murray. So I have Marvin Harrison Jr. I really like Marvin Harrison Jr. I think he's an elite prospect. I think he's one of the best. But the problem is McBride does everything underneath. So he has essentially like a 30% target share, which is like 9 receptions a game. 9 targets a game, which comes out to like 7 receptions a game. So last year, like we just talked about, I've talked about James Cook is touchdown regression. I think this will be McBride will get more touchdowns conversely because last year really hit him. They just out of pure coincidence, he should have more than 3 touchdowns. Should probably double it and get 6. I think last year he had like 111 catches. We're probably getting a little less, like 105. I'm expecting Harrison Jr. obviously to take a step up. I think he'll get over 1,000 yards. I think he'll get his 6 touchdowns. I think he'll be genuinely like a very good player. I don't know if he'll be like as good as he was last year, which was essentially like a top 15 wideout, but I still think he's like a top 20 player. So all things considered, like, we're talking, what is it? Brian Thomas Jr. is probably the best deal, and I think I got him in like my top 10. If he's like top 20, he's probably around like, I got Terry McLaurin in my top 20. I got like Jackson Smith and Jake. I got Devontae Adams. So you paid around at cost for McBride, which isn't like terrible. He's a good player, but now we spent $175 on our team on 3 players. So we literally have $25 left, and we've done this in the first 13 nominations. So this is why you say ruthless aggression, I say reckless abandon, because no amount of aggression makes up for a lack of patience. So 33rd nomination, $3, Justin Fields. I actually like this pick. Funny enough, I'll give a little nugget of something. So I wanted to get my targets. I knew Leyland was going to go after Jalen Hurts. I kind of figured she'd go after Josh Allen, and I kind of also figured Burrow was like Sarah or someone. Burrow is not for Dylan. I wanted either Lamar Jackson or Jane Daniels. I wanted them for under $25. I ended up getting Daniels. Of course, Lamar went for less, of course. But if that did not happen, if I could not get them for that, what would have happened is I would have wanted Fields. I did not want, like, someone asked, it's just like quite a few people were waiting on Bo Nix. I did not want Bo Nix. I did not want like Trevor Lawrence or Jared Goff or J.J. McCarthy. Love's looked good, but I didn't want Jordan Love. I wanted Fields, funny enough. So, and we'll kind of explain why. So I think this is a good deal for $3. So he only started 6 games last year for the Steelers, my Steelers. Love the Steelers. And obviously you got benched for Russell Wilson. Wasn't great. In those starts, though, he scored 19 fantasy points a game. In our league now, with the first downs and everything, that would actually come out to 22.5. So if you took those 6 starts, obviously it's only a third of the season, and you extrapolated them over a whole season, so 18 weeks, so we're saying like he would have been the number 8 fantasy quarterback. So Yeah, because he was top 5 in QBs and carries, rush yards, and rushing touchdowns in those 6 weeks. So Fields at this point is what he is in my eyes. I think he is incredible speed, good deep ball, not great at reading coverage underneath, gets happy feet, and is more or less like he's either he's going to his first read or he's taking the outlet. He has a hard time going through his progressions. That being said, him getting runway on the Jets, like him being the guy, like Tyrod's the backup. Also, by the way, like first time really he's had like a backup quarterback who can teach him how to be a professional. Here's how you watch tape. Here's how you read coverage. Here's how you go over different things. Like I think that's really great for him. All right, I'm gonna turn on the light. So hold on. There we go. Make you a little brighter. So I really like Fields. I think Fields is a bona fide top 7-ish fantasy quarterback. I know you liked Dak Prescott. I do not like Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott has no legs. Fields does. So I'm thinking 3,500 yards, 18 touchdowns, but I'm also thinking like 800 yards rushing, another 8 touchdowns. So that comes out to 26 touchdowns. Those rushing touchdowns, real nice, real meaty, real like those. So I'm thinking like Olivia took, Baker Mayfield for 6. He took Fields for 3. I think Fields is the better deal, and I think Fields will finish right around Baker, if not better, just because of his rushing. I'm genuinely surprised you have not started him, especially considering how good he looked last week. The Steelers are a top 10 defense, and he tore them apart. He looked great, and if that's real, if what he did last week was real, and it happens over a whole season, he's a top 5 fantasy quarterback. So if you're not going to play him, I would hope that you would at least trade him and get some help at running back or receiver. But either way, I think he's a terrific player, and I know that I nominated him, and I know I chummed the waters for him, but I also know I was looking at it, and I was just like, I want to see where he goes if I'm unable to get him, because I got Daniels in the 27th nomination, so this is right after I got him. So if I'd gotten him for $1, I wouldn't have been mad about it. I probably would have just moved him for whatever I could get. But the fact that he's on your team, I think is really good for you. I think you've got a genuine starting quarterback. If you start him, you're not. But hopefully in time you'll realize that. 48th nomination, $5, Khalil Shakir. So I think this guy is mostly Sarah's guy. So Shakir is what we'll call he's the slot man, but I call him the safety valve for the Bills. So obviously he plays with Josh Allen, which is really good for him. He emerged as the top target last year with Stephon Diggs gone. He was pretty good. He caught 77% of the targets, so 4 out of 5. He was elite with the ball in his hands, so he was 7.9 in rack, and I want to say he was like a top 30-ish receiver. But the problem is he doesn't score all that many touchdowns. He only scored 4, and even though he handled, he's a really good short area guy, he doesn't get much run near the goal line. So he's only 25. I like him a lot. I think that, I've talked about my lack of liking Keon Coleman. I know Dalton Kincaid's out there, obviously Dawson Knox, they brought in Joshua Palmer. The issue I have with the Bills is they're kind of treating it like the Packers, where we just have a whole stable of guys, and all of those guys are better than the sum of their parts. They're all good situational players, Christian Watson's good, Romeo Doubs is good, Dontavian Wicks is good, Jaden Reed's good, but you would hope at some point, talent would rise to the top. Even though Kansas City's won a Super Bowl without Tyreek, they haven't exactly looked great without him at receiver, and they've kind of hoped, Sky Moore or Juju Smith-Schuster or someone will replace him. I guess that someone might be Rashee Rice. We'll kind of see. But the point is, most of the elite teams usually need someone who is like the alpha receiver. And right now, it's like Shakir's trying to step into that role, but he's not. He's not. I don't want to say good enough, but he's just not. That's not his player profile. He's not going to be the elite number one guy on the outside who can beat a man on man. That's just not what he does. So he's kind of a mid ceiling, like a high ceiling, but no, I would say mid, high floor, low ceiling kind of guy. Like he's a starter for your team. I'm also surprised you're not playing him again. But he's not really going to do anything more than what he is projected to do. Like he'll probably not have a game where he scores lower than 8 fantasy points, but he also probably won't have a game where he scores more than 16 fantasy points. It's going to be like that the whole year. So if you're okay with that, like he's a starter in our league, but it's just not like you can't rely on him to give you anything more. And that's kind of like, again, I like upside, and he doesn't have a lot of upside. But for $5, I don't mind it. Like on your team, he's definitely a starter. 58th nomination, $1, Trevor Lawrence. So we took your Jaguars backup quarterback on your team is Trevor. Ugh, he looked real rough last week. So, I mean, I won't go too much into this. Frankly, I don't think I have Trevor as like a top 20 fantasy quarterback. So the fact that he's even on a team surprises me. He's looking for a bounce back. Last year was pretty rough. I think he only played like 9 games. Then Mac Jones took over. They also fired their coach again. So new coach, Liam Cohen, former Bucs offensive coordinator. Excuse me. Helped reinvigorate Baker Mayfield for his career year. Helped discover Bucky Irving. Hoping to do the same thing in Jacksonville. I'm going to have to see it to believe it. Because I think, if I remember correctly, he's had 1 year. And we're going into like year 5. So I want to say like his second year when they went to the playoffs. He was like the 11th best fantasy quarterback. There are 14 teams in our league. You need to be in the top 14 to be a starter. So if he was barely a starter, the 1 year he was good, why the hell is he on a team? So, I mean, I think he's solid. I think he's got a good coach. I think he's got good weapons. Brian Thomas Jr., Travis Hunter, ETN looked good. They got Tutton now in the backfield that they trade Tank Bigsby. We'll say 4,000 yards. We'll say 23 touchdowns. We'll say maybe 4 touchdowns rushing, maybe a couple hundred yards rushing. Trevor Lawrence at this point is going to have to, like, show me that he's got something. Because, like, it's not been, like, I'm waiting. Like, he's supposed to be, he won a national championship at Clemson. He has all of the like traits that you look for to build a quarterback. He's kind of like Justin Herbert in that sense. I think the issue is, like, kind of like Herbert hasn't had good coaching. I think Liam Cohen can be a good coach, but it's going to take essentially Lawrence unlearning 4 years of just a mess of development. And I don't need that on my fantasy team. Like, I'm not going to wait for that. Like, I don't care. Like, I assume playing him because of the matchup against Cincinnati this week. Like, Fields legitimately just played at least top 10, possibly top 5 defense last week and looked fantastic. Lawrence played one of the worst and looked bad. Just not like terrible, but bad. So, I mean, if you want to keep trotting him out and keep him on your team for loyalty or for Jaguars, that's fine. But I think you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot because unless, like, I would rather see Lawrence be on free agency in our league and see him turn around than, like, wait on him on my team waiting for him to turn around because I don't wait on quarterback. That's silly. I could get a quarterback. The only teams left with 2 quarterbacks now are Charlie, who always does that and has exactly 1 playoff victory in 12 years. Olivia, who's a new team like you, obviously you, and then like Robbie, who always does double quarterback and is currently at the bottom of the league. So it's only after week 1, so maybe Robbie will turn around. But yeah, holding 2 quarterbacks means that you're eating up bench space. And if that's what you want to do, that's your business. But once you kind of find a guy, usually you're never going to not play that guy. I think you might have found the guy, and I'm surprised you're not going to play him. So we won't go too much into it because most of the rest of the team basically got cut by now. Yeah, so I mean, we can go to your actual team on your actual roster. Uh, Currently, your number two running back is Kenneth Gainwell, who's the backup in Pittsburgh. He actually looked relatively decent last week. He has beaten out Caleb Johnson essentially for the number two job currently. I don't know how long that's gonna stay true to form, just because they drafted Caleb Johnson in the third round, but they don't trust him in pass protection. So it's gonna be like quite a bit of a wait for him. But I think Gainwell might have like a good year. We'll say like maybe 700 yards, maybe like 8 touchdowns. So I think he'll have a good year. I think as the year wears on, Caleb Johnson will take more and more timeshare if he is what I think he is. So just be on the lookout for like a number two starting running back. We picked up Mark Andrews after McKenzie dropped him, so I don't really need to go too much into Andrews. But essentially, like, I like Mark Andrews. I know he feels bad about dropping that pass in the AFC Championship game. No, AFC Divisional round last year to lose to the Bills. And he was a top 8 fantasy tight end last year after being a top 5 fantasy tight end the previous 5 years. But I think that more had to do with his touchdowns. He scored 11 touchdowns last year. He only had 55 receptions. So I think we'll have more receptions, but probably around the same amount of yards, which is 650 yards receiving, and less touchdowns. He's in for touchdown regression because he was first in tight ends in touchdowns. So you picked him up. You're kind of hoping he gets like more play. It did not look promising week 1. I think he only got like 1 reception. So I think he'll get more than that, obviously. But unlike before when he was an elite fantasy option, there's just more mouths to feed now. There's DeAndre Hopkins and Zay Flowers. We're bringing back Isaiah Likely. Obviously, Lamar wants to run. Obviously, we have Derrick Henry. We have Justice Hill, who we like out of the backfield. There's a lot of pieces now to this Baltimore offense. I think, honestly, if I had to go man for man, I think Baltimore's the most talented team in the NFL, despite what happened in Buffalo last week. I don't think it's wrong to pick up Andrews and see what he's got. I just wouldn't be all that patient with him if it doesn't look like he's even getting targets, because that just means they don't trust. Well, not even that they don't trust him, they just have other options at this point. You're starting Juju Smith-Schuster, who now suddenly is a fantasy relevant, so this is like Stefan and Sarah's guy, but he's kind of fallen off the last few years. Like he left Pittsburgh, he went to Kansas City, wins a ring, then goes to New England, get his payday, gets paid, looks terrible, leaves, comes back to Kansas City, and now he's like their number 4 receiver, but he's startable because Rashee Rice is suspended and Xavier Worthy is hurt, and we've traded Sky Moore, so Hollywood Brown's number 1, therefore Juju is the slot man. Anyway, I think he's just like filler until Worthy comes back. I think it's fine, I guess. I wouldn't rely on him for a whole season, but, maybe for like a few weeks, he's startable. And I think, no, we're almost done. We still have Romeo Doubs, who you picked up. Yeah, you were trying to give me a hard time about Jayden Reed. Oh, look, Jayden Reed's now gone for 2 months. Like, he literally is walking around with a broken foot. The guy can't even run. So, sorry if he scored a touchdown last week, but I kind of figured he'd get hurt, and he got hurt anyway. So, yeah, Romeo Doubs is the bona fide number 2 in Green Bay behind. So, Jayden Reed's funny enough the slot man. Matthew Golden's currently the number 1, and Romeo Doubs is the number 2. Funny enough, I just mentioned Buffalo has like a bunch of receivers, and they're hoping someone like comes out of their stable of receivers, but right now it's just like all kind of variants. Maybe Tucker Kraft will be the number 1 in Green Bay. I don't know, but I kind of see Buffalo the same way I see Green Bay, and Green Bay is just like a bunch of good players at receiver, but not there's no alpha guy. I like Dobbs. He's led the team in targets, receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns. Were in his 3 years. So in his 3 years, he's accumulated 237 targets, 147 receptions, 1,700 yards receiving, and 15 touchdowns in 3 years. So going into year 4. However, that's only basically come out to like 10 fantasy points a game, which is good. It's about average. He peaked, I want to say, a couple years ago with like 59 receptions, 674 receiving yards, and 8 touchdowns. But that still wasn't even a top 40 receiving year. So he's a good, I need somebody to play, breaking case of glass kind of receiver, but he's not a starter probably for you at any point in time that you would want to rely on. Which kind of gets to like my next point. So we're trotting out like Mark Andrews, Juju Smith-Schuster. We got real funky, and we picked up Nick Bonito at defensive line while we sit Micah Parsons on our bench, while we sit Trey Hendrickson on our bench. And then we picked up Drew Tranquill, and we're starting him over Quincy Williams. I understand you're trying to what we'll call play the matchups, especially with your defensive players, especially because you've put yourself in this hole coming out of the draft where you are lacking depth and you're trying to just get wins. And I will say that playing the matchups defensively, I've seen work in short spurts before. Like someone can essentially, we'll call guess right, and play a defensive back. That defensive back's a corner. The corner gets an interception, takes it for a touchdown that makes their whole week. I've seen that. The problem is trying to do that over like a season-long, basically like a season-long pattern is a very narrow path to victory. I don't think you're actually going to listen to me. I think you kind of have to just take this year to make your mistakes, kind of learn on your own, because it seems like that's what you're essentially doing. But if you asked me, I would tell you that your best path would probably be, if we'll put trading aside, the best path would probably be trying to build long-term prospects on our bench. So what do we mean by that? Well, usually what I tell people is like how you use your bench is usually different for everyone. But in the early goings of the season, so like I'm going to say the first 10 weeks of the season, usually what I am trying to do is find someone who can maybe contribute later down the line, or who I think a lot of and can be very good maybe later in the season. And the reason for that is, well, let's say I think Mac's currently starting Hollywood Brown. I like Hollywood Brown. He's now the number 1 in Kansas City. I don't think that's going to hold up, obviously, over the whole season, but, it might. But the point is, usually that's not the type of player that I would want early in the season unless I really need to start them. And the reason for that is because I want to see, just like rookie running backs, I have a lot of patience for them because as the season progresses, they get more belief from their coaching staff who learns to trust them more. And that usually can make or break your season. I always go back to Aaron Jones, who I thought coming out of training camp was the best running back in Green Bay his rookie year. He does not get a start till week 12, and on his first touch, he takes it for a touchdown. And I'm just like, this has been here the whole time. What were we waiting for? But coaching staffs are very slow to trust rookies. That's especially true in Pittsburgh currently with Mike Tomlin and Arthur Smith and Caleb Johnson. So that's also true. Like I saw this week, Brian dropped, I'll give an example. Brian dropped Matthew Golden this week, and I totally understand why. As I've mentioned before, Green Bay has a stable of wide receivers. They are using them essentially, no one's playing the most amount of snaps. They're just using them like they're switching out different players. They're treating it almost like a offensive or defensive line. So kind of like with Buffalo, I understand, in a possibly running offense with receivers where we don't know who any given week is the starter, Golden possibly doesn't have the upside to be a number one target, to be a bankable fantasy starter. For me, I picked up Golden because I actually liked him in the draft. So we're going way, way back. He was one of my favorite receivers coming out this year. I really obviously like his speed. I think his role was to replace Christian Watson, who might be coming back and they just signed to extension. But the point is, I'm essentially betting on, like, we're looking at the role, I'm betting on the talent. I think Matthew Golden has a lot of talent. I think his talent will rise him above everyone else in that stable of receivers at some point. Now, do I really want to be that patient with him? That's the issue. So, but currently, we're going into week 2. I have enough running backs. I like my stable of receivers currently. I have Marvin Harrison Jr. Fingers crossed, Chris Olave stays healthy. Jacoby Myers, who no one wants to trade for, who, by the way, since week 3 week 3 of last year, has been a top 15 fantasy wide receiver, and I still cannot find a trade for this man, so I guess he's just going to start every week and prove people wrong. I got Cedric Tillman, and then Jalen Waddle, which we don't really need to get into right now because Miami's just a dumpster fire. But I like my receivers. I have Chris Godwin possibly coming back at some point. So I'm like, I have the space. I'll take someone who I think long-term might become something. And if they don't, maybe I was out of the space. Kind of sucks. But, I rolled the dice on someone. I think that's the kind of thing you ought to be doing, especially a team towards the bottom of the standings, because you have the space. You have extra defensive players who you're not playing. Like, even if you want to say you really like Micah Parsons, and even if you want to say you really like Trey Hendrickson, and even if you want to say I really like Nick Bonito's matchup, the issue you're going to run into is you're trying to play matchup every week and trying to maximize that win, but you're not really using your bench to full out build for the future to try and have assets that you can trade. So especially on a team like yours where you don't really have bankable starters every week. Right now, your current starters that you have to start are Bijan, Gainwell, CeeDee Lamb, Trey McBride. I'd say everyone else on your team is kind of iffy. So usually I would say you want to answer less questions. And the best way to go about that is to find more starters. If you can't find more starters on free agency and you're not really churning through free agency to find players that could possibly start for you down the road, then you should trade for them. Especially because you're again starting Trevor Lawrence. I know you could trade Justin Fields for something. You're not starting Khalil Shakir, who should probably be a starter for you. And you're using bench space for Micah Parsons, Trey Hendrickson, Quincy Williams. I also like to say, just as an aside, I kind of see every year Charlie just goes out on her island of misfit toys and just does whatever, and she blows her budget, and then she wonders why her team gets bad. She wondered oh, my team did so well last week, and then of course what's going to happen is she's going to get injured over the season, the team's going to dip and get worse. That's usually what happens. Her team just gets worse. The more you are like Charlie's team, the less likely you are in the long haul to be successful. She's the currently only other person keeping multiple defensive players on her team. I think that you should be using your bench to try and find players that could possibly help contribute or become starters for you over the long haul who could become trade assets. Now, if you don't want to do that, that's totally up to you. You're going to do your own thing. I kind of, again, see this season as your learning curve. I don't expect you to make the playoffs, and that's okay. But I'm happy that you're at least engaged. Just don't forget to not be engaged with it. As long as we're not starting Tua, at least we're kind of figuring that out at quarterback. But I would say, all in all, I think this will be a big learning curve for you. I think actually next year, your team will be quite good because you'll learn so much from this year because you're so aggressive about it. But I think you just kind of came into the draft unprepared, and I think it kind of overwhelmed you. And that's kind of the way I thought it would go. So I'm interested to see how you continue to run your team. I'm interested to see how you continue to try to play the matchups. I just think in the long haul, it's not like a feasible strategy. I think at some point you're gonna want to have to like build out your team. People have asked me for trade ideas, like what would that look like, Dylan? So like, we'll throw something feasible out there. So hold on. I think the team you ought to probably trade with is probably Stefan. I think probably Stefan because Stefan did not take my advice. I offered him to Jacoby Myers. He still does not want him. Has no basically receiving core. So is starting ETN, who he likes. Probably isn't going to trade him. Obviously, he's not going to trade Jacobs. So I think your play is probably trading like CeeDee Lamb, and then if you don't like Justin Fields, you can attach him to that. And then doing something like Tony Pollard, RJ Harvey, and then you're stealing like another receiver from him, so like Stephon Diggs. I don't know how Stefan would feel about that. I think he might just be like, oh, well, I really like Diggs. And I would just be like, why? He's coming off an ACL injury. I told you he was injured. So you might be like, well, I don't really like Tony Pollard. I really don't like RJ Harvey, and I really don't like Diggs. And I might be like, well, I think Harvey will get better as the season goes on. I think Pollard is a solid starting running back who can start over Gainwell for you. And I think Diggs may not be like the best, not as good as obviously CeeDee Lamb. That's definitely like a step down. So if you want to push back and get T. Higgins, I can understand it. But I think he's a solid player who might get better as the season goes on. He gets healthier. You're just trying to find depth. And that's really like the big thing for you. That's the big worry I have. And by you using all of these bench spaces for defensive players, you're not actually using it to find depth. You're just trying to play matchups to win that week. And that's, again, very difficult to do over the long haul. So, I don't know. I'd consider dropping at least one of the defensive linemen to get Dalton Kincaid, who I quite like and I think is a good quality tight end. I would definitely start Shakir, if not starting Fields. And yeah, all in all, I think this season's you're going to learn a lot. And I think essentially, I think the phrase is the beatings will continue until morale improves. I think this year you're just going to take a beating. And we'll see what you learn from it. I'm excited for you for next year because I think you'll learn a lot. But for this year right now, it's going to be tough sledding.